Hello everybody, this is Jan for Chess24 and this is another episode of Jan's Opening Clinic, the show where I answer Chess24 premium users' opening questions using all the expertise I have hopefully acquired over many years of clicking buttons to look at chess openings. Let's jump right into it. MasterGambit is saying, "Hi Jan, I have a hard time with black against the Scottish Gambit. E4, E5, Najdorf, Nc6, D4, ED, 4 bishop C4, or 4 C3. How can I spoil the fun for my opponent? Is, if possible, without taking a big risk and without playing completely passively. Is 4 bishop E7 an option? Thanks in advance." This is a topic I would guess I should know something about. I've covered it in many a video series, including, I believe, the repertoire on the Italian I did on Chess24. Or was it in there in the movers? I would guess it's in there somewhere. And certainly in the E4, E5 course I did on Chessable, which was a complete repertoire. After E4, E5, it's a line that theoretically should not bother us very much, neither bishop c4 or c3, but we sometimes have to make some tough decisions here based on the rest of our repertoire. So, for example, if after bishop c4 you want to play knight f6, which I recommended in the Chessable thing, then after d4, e d4 is your best move, and you're used to this position anyway, which means that after d4, ed, bishop c4, you can comfortably play knight f6 and you won't be caught off guard. If this is not your normal repertoire, you might want to think about playing one of the alternatives here, which, for example, are bishop c5, then meeting c3 with knight f6, transposing back to the Italian, or the greedier and riskier bishop b4 check. So what I would do usually is play knight f6 here. I don't think there's any particular issues. You have to know a bit of theory. You have to know the line short castles, knight takes e4, rook e1, pawn to d5. I'm going to rush through this because I don't have time for a 40-minute lecture in this format. For more info, stuff I plugged earlier. So this line here, many moves equalize. Queen d7 equalizes, queen a5 does, queen h5 does. I usually give queen h5. Knight takes e4, bishop e6, and black equalizes after a few more moves. The main line goes something like this. Takes, bishop f4. Now you have a choice, but I believe here many a move equalize, including queen f5 or random move like h6. So this is fine. Sorry, once again. I'm rushing through this a little bit. Knight f6, the critical move is e5 when you have a choice between pawn to d5, bishop b5, knight e4, which I think is fine. Knight takes d4, bishop c5, or bishop to d7. I never liked it that much, mainly for aesthetic reasons. So I have dabbled with knight g4, which I don't think is great, and knight e4, which I do think is pretty good. When, once again, there's quite a bit of theory to this, but I do think that black is completely fine. The main line is something like queen e2, knight c5 castles, knight e6, bishop takes e6, and now either f takes e or d takes e. Equalize. Some more lines there. Sorry, not easy to give a full lecture on this because, as mentioned, time is short. So I would recommend knight f6 in this position. If you don't like it, bishop c5 is fine too. Then after c3 you don't want to take, but you want to go knight to f6 here. When you have to be ready for e5, d5. This is a theoretical line. That's a bit tricky. Or for a cd4, bishop b4 check, which once again has some theory, but it's nothing to be worried about unduly. Then you also asked about e takes d4, pawn to c3. And I think I looked at both taking the pawn, which I thought was fine, and pawn to d5. In the very recent past, since you want something solid, I'll restrict myself to d5 here, which is solid and easy to learn. Ed, queen d5. This position is relevant because you can get it via different move orders. C takes d4, bishop b4 check, knight c3, bishop g4. Sort of easy, you just develop everything with tempo. Bishop e2, and here's the one key move you should know, is here you take on f3 directly. Bishop f3 and queen to c4. Stopping white from castling. White has to make a concession to get there. Anyway, what they usually do is take and now play queen e2 check. You take, takes, long castles. Black is slightly better. In the endgame, knight comes to e7, bishop comes to b6. There is literally not a thing to worry about. Probably misuse of literally, but you get the idea. So d5 is very solid and has discouraged people from playing these c3 gambit for generations. And what else was there? You also asked if 4 bishop e7 is an option. No, it's just bad. Like after knight takes d4, white is better here. And after c3, I would guess white is also better. One point is you don't want to go d takes c3 in this position because then queen d5 is a bit of a nuisance. And queen b3 is as well. I'm just mentioning queen b3 because I always thought queen d5 wins here. But when entering this into the computer says this, while better for white, is not completely winning. So queen b3 might be an even better move. Either way, bishop e7 is bad. And you want to choose between knight f6, bishop c5, or bishop b4 check here. All of those are fine. I would go knight to f6. And I think I gave you the critical lines. Thanks for your question, Mr. MasterGambit. That's a strange fear, by the way, for someone named MasterGambit to have a hard time with the Scottish Gambit. Anyway, I hope that helps a little bit. For more here on Chess24, I think in my Italian series, you'll find some more pointers. Then FLOLJ is saying, Moyan, against 1d4, I play the Triangle Slav based on Sopiko's video series. So basically 1d5, 2e6, 3c6 against most things. But against the London, I don't like it much. So I looked at your recommendations and I like the play with c5. Now here comes the problem. Those two things aren't really compatible, especially when I face 1d4, d5, 2 knight f3. Is there any way to still combine the two? And if not, what would be my best option after d4, d5, knight f3, e6, bishop f4? Preferably still playing for c5. Thanks a lot. Good old London system, huh? Let's go there. So d4, d5, knight f3. The point is you want to go e6, not knight f6, which is more flexible against the London for repertoire reasons. And now, after bishop f4, you understandably don't want to play c6. Yeah. Having committed to e6, some of the lines I gave, which I guess were, whatever, knight f6, bishop f4, c5, e3, knight c6 based are no longer possible, like knight d2, queen b6, and so on. But you can still try to get to that territory, which I think I covered. If you go c5 here, for example, white will play e3. You go knight f6 or knight c6, move for that, shouldn't matter so much. They will play c3 or knight bd2. And you will end up in this position, which I guess I was talking about bishop d6 and cd, ed, knight h5 and so on. I have to say, since I did that London video series, that d4, d5 sidelines video series, I wasn't 100% sure if I covered this stuff deeply enough there, and I got some fears. Those are very specific and quote-unquote high-level opening fears. I think the repertoire still sort of makes sense, but I got some worried about these types of positions here. So I have sort of come to the school of thought, and this is also what, for example, Magnus Carlsen does, if you need a reference, that it might be easier to just play with bishop d6 in all these positions, no matter what happens. And then you can very much combine with your d5, e6 move order, go bishop d6 here, or even better, do it immediately without including knight f6, e3. Because now one of the moves that sometimes is annoying with knight f6, e3 included no longer makes a lot of sense, knight e5, because you can go knight e7 and f6. So after bishop d6, I would guess they play bishop g3, and you can just play this system, knight f6, e3 castles, whatever they do, bishop d3, pawn to b6, and it's fairly simple to play with black. You want to play c5. If they go c3, you usually want to play bishop to a6. And exchange this dangerous bishop. And then, you know, play a lovely game of chess. So something along these lines. I don't think black has to be unduly worried. So I hope that made sense. I understand your desire to transpose back to the triangle, even though, yeah, for me personally, I kind of like messing with the triangle once the knight is on c3 in this position. Okay, you can't get back to your repertoire, but I always thought if we want to play semi-Slav anyway, then why not do this? But I understand it will take you out of the repertoire, so nothing to be said against going e6 when it comes to London system, because many of the main lines nowadays are based on playing e6 anyway. So there you go. I hope that helped Mr. FLOLJ. Do we have more questions? Wow, this is a long text by Mr.E. Hello, Mr. Connoisseur of Chess Openings. My question is regarding the highly underexplored Nimzowitsch Defence, an option I think is severely underestimated. Wow. Anyway, the line I have trouble goes e4, knight c6, 2 d4, 2 knight f3, e5 exclamation mark is okay for black. That brings me to my first question. Not that I disagree with that statement, but what do you gain by playing 1 knight c6 if after knight f3, e5, which you claim is okay for black, is the plan? Like, what do you avoid? So why not play, and this is not an e4, e5 advertising, which I always do, but what's the gain? That's my point. This is a position you will get in 98% of the games. You play e4, e5, and if people don't play knight f3, you should be thrilled. Like if they play f4 or knight c3, or, well, bishop c4 is not a bad move, but you will transpose to your knight c6 repertoire anyway. So I never saw any upside with 1 knight to c6. And after d4, d5, which I think the question we'll talk about more later, I don't think knight c3 is the only challenging move. I think e5 is fairly challenging, which leads to fresh weird positions, so maybe you're fine with those. But strategically or big picture wise, this does look like a better version of a 3e5 Caro-Kann to me, like these kind of strange positions, which are playable for black, but that space has to mean something. So there would be one worry. I'm also not sure, isn't this a move? Ed, queen d5, knight f3. It's not done very often, but I don't know how black equalizes here. I'm not trying to be controversial, just naming options. Bishop g4, knight c3. I don't see it. I think they go queen h5, d5, long castles. And black players are happy here, but it's not so simple. White goes bishop e2. Not so easy to equalize. e6, there's this knight g5 trick. And bishop f3, queen e5, bishop e3 also looks a bit better for white. So, I have some issues with the upside of the Nimzowitsch while allowing all that stuff, just for some perspective. And now let's get to the question. Sorry, just wanted to get that part out before I forget. So e4 knight c6, 2 d4 d5 exclamation mark, knight c3 d takes e4 d5, and now the knight e5 variation has a shady reputation. Perhaps it's justified. 4 knight b8 solves black's issues, although it's slightly passive in nature. Yeah, I think knight b8 was supposed to be more solid there, but I can't claim a lot of expertise because, as explained earlier, never saw the upside to investigating knight c6 much. Bishop f4, knight g6, bishop g3, and now a6 looks like black's best bet, avoiding any knight b5 or bishop b5. Put it all on the board in it. Bishop c4 is the move, giving me a headache, as neither I or Stockfish 11 am able to fully equalize. 7 f5, keeping the pawn, has some usage and correspondence, but unsurprisingly white scores quite well. 7 h4 is interesting, and so on. 7 b5 seems to be like the best try, forcing, okay. And so on and so forth. So basically, yeah, long lines, can you and perhaps Leela help me? I'll put it on the board, or I did put it on the board. I'm not sure how much I can help you because you clearly did a lot of work already and used a good engine, and I cannot overturn these results very much, but we can have a look. So knight c3, d takes e4, d5. Here, as you mentioned, I think knight to b8 does have a better reputation. And bishop f4, knight f6, bishop c4, a6. These types of lines, they also need to be checked, but it looked like black was doing kind of all right here, no? So you're kind of asking for a turn, no? You play one knight c6, which maybe is the first non-optimal move, and then another one on move 4. Then you deserve to suffer a little bit for 2 cents on the first 4 moves. Even though, yeah, I don't think black has to be lost here or anything, but it's pushing luck just a little bit. I don't know if queen d4 is an issue here. I guess black's supposed to hold there. So let's look at the lines that you were talking about. Knight g6, bishop g3, a6. And here, yeah, both h4 and bishop c4 are critical. So h4, e5, takes, h5, knight e7. How did this go? Knight takes e4, knight f6, takes, here. And I couldn't see an easy black draw for black here, like rook c2, bishop c3, and stuff like this. Sorry, I'm just blitzing out the moves, but I'm sure you either already looked at it or you can look at it afterwards. Stuff like this you might hold, but you have to suffer. And what was it? Knight c6 was similar. No, knight c6, bishop c3, knight b4, bishop d3. So black is suffering a bit after h4 as well, as far as I could tell. And bishop c4, b5, bishop b3, e5. Actually, I think I agree with all the lines you gave here. Or Leela agrees, more importantly. I think the post is mainly saying, I don't have access to Leela. Switch on your Leela and see if it can overturn my Stockfish analysis. Not really. They're on the same page in this stuff. So takes, knight takes e4. This is the position you got to. Here h6 was an alternative, which it's not roses either. I think I slightly prefer knight f6, but h6 exists as well, just to stop knight to g5. White was a bit better, like stuff was something like this. And yeah, black is slightly worse. But I think I prefer your line. Knight f6, knight g5, e5, knight e6, king f7, knight f8, rook f8, knight f3. And this position doesn't look too scary, does it? King e6. It's not the end of the world. White is maybe a little bit better, but it does look fairly tenable to me. Stuff like this. You shouldn't lose. So I think it's sort of a a fair outcome. As I said, I don't see much upside to the opening, but I also agree that's not necessarily bad to play one knight c6. For me, it's more of a practical thing. Why would I spend time studying e4, knight c6, d4, if I can just get the same position with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6 that I'm going for anyway? So that was always my reasoning. As for your analysis, looks like you did a good job, and I would go for this position. You can keep clicking here if you want, but I believe, yeah, such endgames are pretty common occurrence in many openings if you go deep, and looks tenable. So just go here, and yeah, good job researching the Nimzowitsch. What else do we have in store? Mr.E. Ludwig Carlson. He's saying, hi Jan, do you think black can hold on the queen sacrifice line against the Catalan? d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, g3, dc, and so on and so forth. I'll put it on the board. I'm thinking about trying this line. It feels like a fun and relatively easy way to make a draw with black. Is there anything else that's scary for black after c5? Yeah, I would not do that. So let me bring up my chessboard. The Catalan g3, dc, bishop g2, c5. This is one of the very main lines. And you're asking about this queen sacrifice, which I don't know, this was popular a long time ago, no? In the 80s maybe. Did Anderson play it, or did someone do it against Kasparov? Like, it used to be popular. But I don't think it's a fun and relatively easy way to try to make a draw. I think it's just suffering in a line that's not that critical with no upside. So how does this go? Takes, bishop c6. I believe that both queen c2 and knight d2 are unpleasant, but knight d2 I think more so. Just trying to take the pawn. The main line goes b5, pawn to a4. After a6 you ended up in trouble. You're not quite in time, so they usually play bishop e7. Takes, knight takes c4. Little tactical trick, bishop c4, queen a4 check. Black castles, white plays b3. fd8, and I think queen e1 was the most precise here. Maybe you draw this, maybe you don't, but I would not do this to sign up for having a rook and a bishop for a queen from that early stage in the game and trying to hold. Yeah, I don't really see the point. Also, this line with queen a4, I believe black is quite happy here with bishop d7, so there's really not a lot of reason to give that queen. Bishop d7, queen c4, b5. This line they've been doing pretty okay. So I would much rather play this than the queen sacrifice. And as for your question, if there are other dangerous lines, yeah, many. Like dc c5 is fine, it's a full-fledged main line, but there are many attempts. White has here d takes c5. It's probably the most played line nowadays. Queen d1, rook d1, bishop c5, and now both knight bd2 and knight fd2 are asking some questions. Knight bd2, slightly more critical. c3, b takes c, this endgame. You can hold, but you have to know what you're doing. There's this famous game Vidit against Jorn van for Race, where Jorn was very well prepared, blitzed out a lot of moves, but still went down. So yeah, black is fighting for equality here. Can reach it, but he has to know what he's doing. 95 is also critical, even though I think they more or less solved this complex. It's still something you have to be very aware of. And so is knight to a3, which I think Dubov has been experimenting with or playing. So yeah, there's many a line to know after going for this. And if they play queen a4, which nowadays is not that popular, I would never ever give that queen. I would play bishop t7 in this position. So I'm saying so a lot today, but yeah, I don't like that line. You might be able to draw the ensuing position, but I don't think it's much fun. I understand the appeal. It looks sort of nice and active and cool to sacrifice the queen, and you have this bishop on the long diagonal, and we have a pawn and so on. But move by move, it's just, trying to hold an unpleasant position. So not a fan, sorry. Then we have Mr. Kieran. Kieran is saying Hayan is the classical Slav with 4 DC4, still regarded as a good weapon at the top. Especially the Sokolov variation with DC A4, Bishop F5, Knight E5, Knight BD7, Knight C4, Knight B6, Knight E5, A5. Seems to be quite unpopular now. Any reason? Honestly, I've been asking myself the same thing, and I'm not sure I have the answer. Not so much about the Sokolov variation, but about the popularity. Sorry, that's still the old line of the Slav with DC4, because it feels like we haven't seen it all that often, at least at the higher levels recently. I do it a bit, but I usually go A4 E6 and not A4 Bishop F5 here. So the honest answer is I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, I haven't seen any refutations anywhere. But clearly, guys aren't too thrilled to go for these positions. I guess both E3 and this complex and Knight to E5 are asking some questions. Could be one reason. Another reason could be that white just avoids it a lot by going Knight F3 E3, so you don't really get to, or Knight C3 E3, so you don't really get to show your stuff, or with taking on D5 at some point. So frankly, I'm not sure. I've sometimes tried to look at this from the black side, and I was never that excited about either Knight B6 or the other main line, this Queen C7, G3, E5 business. But it's not exactly like I have any refutations of anything. Knight B6 I've also tried to bust from the white perspective or with the white pieces, but it's fairly resilient. It's not like you can force a win here. The problem is more that white has many serious tries, it looks like. At some point everyone went playing E3, but I'm not sure if E3 is that great after Knight BD7. I believe black players have been holding things together here after Queen B3 or Knight C4. So white has different dangerous tries. This move H4, which looks very cool, at least, is a very serious move and is asking some questions. If G6 they go H5, and if E6 they go F3, trying to trap that bishop. H6, E4, bishop H7, bishop E3. This kind of stuff, it's not exactly pleasant for black, but it's not refuting the line either. And similar things could be said about F3, which, I wouldn't fancy playing with black. But it's not like black is lost here or anything. Bishop E2 or bishop E3. I think white is somewhat better after both. For a while, bishop E3, queen B6, they were thrilled with black here, but even this stuff I thought was not so easy for black. So, and also after bishop E2, you sort of have to play E6, these more passive positions. So I don't think there's one particular line that busts it necessarily, but there's just a bunch of lines that are slightly unpleasant, like after G3. I would also, given a choice, take white. So it's just, that's giving white a lot of options where black doesn't have that much upside against either of the options, but it's always, your typical, slightly passive, but solid, whatever, 0-30 in 0-40 in engine speak, Slav position. And I guess at the highest levels, people just think the positions after either DC A4 E6 or after E6 going for the semi-Slav offer more value, not mentioning all the Ragozins, Grunfelds, Queen's Gambit declined, Catalans we see played. I have a feeling that could change though. Like I said, I don't think there's anything particularly devastating out there. And you never know with chess fashion. So I don't think we should say this line is in trouble and not coming back. And I'm sure there are still many very strong players that also play it. But it does feel like, we see it around a little less often than we used to. So I noticed the same thing, but I don't really have a refutation of the line you mentioned. It's just, yeah, choosing between many pleasant options is usually not what we want our opponents to do. Thanks for the question, Kieran. Then we have Awake. He's saying, hi Jan, I'm looking for some advice in the French defense for black. After e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, I'm fine with 4 e5, but against 4 bishop g5, I'm not sure what to do. I always thought the Rubinstein with de and knight e4, bishop e7, bishop f6. Now gf6 is the play, but after I had to face some uncomfortable lines lately that I wanted to check, I found out that knight b7 seems to be used more often than not, and I couldn't figure out why. Probably it's because of these uncomfortable lines you had to face, no? So is one of those variations better right now? Which possible new move made people shift over to knight bd7? Or would you go with other variations, like the McCutcheon or for bishop e7? Thanks in advance. At this point, I should do my usual disclaimer that I have never played the French defense in my life. I probably never will. And I also do not play 1 e4 very often. So e4, e6 is not exactly my area of expertise. Still, I will try to answer the question. Bishop g5. I agree that de4, at least for spacebar people, and I think most French experts, does seem to be the move here nowadays. Bishop e7, e5, knight fd7. Looks like they're doing quite okay with this h4. And McCutcheon leads to very sharp play. I have not checked it recently, but it also gives white a lot of options, no? So if I were to play the French, I'd certainly be team de4, knight e4. And I do think that knight bd7 is the move that you can sort of cleanly equalize, or maybe not cleanly equalize, but where you can sort of click your way to a reasonable result, which maybe is appealing if you're looking for clarity and solidity. While bishop e7, bishop f6, gf, I have to admit I've never looked at this in detail. So I'm not aware of like one big new trend that made this unplayable. I don't think engines hate it. It's obviously more double-edged because you accept these double pawns and in return get the two bishops. So it's not like striving for solidity in the same way that knight bd7 is. But honestly, I don't know. I don't know what the issue is here, for example. And also, it depends a lot after queen d2, let's say, what line you're intending to play. Are you intending to play a6, b6, f5, knight d7? There are still quite some choices here for black. As far as I know, the critical moves are still the critical moves here. Knight f3, queen d2, and knight c3. Knight c3 has become more popular. All of those are asking serious questions. Knight c3, you keep the option to go g3, bishop g2, you keep the option to go here. Sometimes d5 becomes an issue. So it could be that just, yeah, white having added more choices to the menu made this a little less popular than it used to be, but I'm not aware of any glaring problem. So knight bd7, yeah, as mentioned, it's very solid, and black even has a choice after knight f3. You can go bishop e7, which I think Vityugov has played recently, knight f6, bishop f6, where I kind of think that white can push a bit after h4, but I haven't analyzed this position deeply. Like I said, a deep work, I probably can just, finish the job here. And I also thought that after knight f3, h6 was a fairly solid way to play. Knight f6, knight f6. I used to think this was the way to go for white, but black is pretty solid here. So I do not know what the issue is in this line either. Like usually they don't take on f6, but they play bishop e3. Then I think knight d5 was a move. Bishop d6 was also a move. Tending to play b6, bishop b7. And yeah, this looks like a reasonable position for black. And if I had to choose, I'd for sure be team knight bd7, not bishop e7, but also I'm a chicken and I strive for solidity and instead of, you know, double-edged play. I do very much recall how Nimzowitsch was doing this against everybody in the late 90s and 2000s, whenever it was. But he had a huge phase of doing this thing with a6, b5, with, I think, great results and certainly very interesting games. So I understand the appeal. Yeah, in my opinion, or I would go for knight b7 because it's more solid and easier to analyze. But if you're looking for complications, looking for sharp play, looking to play to create some imbalances early, I do not think this line has been put out of business by anything. So go for it. What do we have next? We have JohannWilhelmMoebius. He's saying, "Hi Jan, I'm a Najdorf player. What do you recommend against e4, c5, knight c3? To d6, then I lose a tempo against 3f4, or to knight c6. Then I have to deal with knight ge2, g6, d4, or 3 bishop b5. Thanks, JohannWilhelmMoebius." I think your choice as a Najdorf player is between to d6 and to a6. Knight c6 you just can't do. After knight f3, like it's... Sorry, I should put all this stuff on the board. So as a Najdorf player, after 2 knight c3, which more often than not, or I'm not sure if more often than not, but at mostly at higher levels, this is intended to sort of move the black out of the Najdorf. No, there's not that many people that want to play a pure, what's it called, Grand Prix attack or close Sicilian with g3. So to be consistent with your repertoire, I believe that most experts have settled, most Najdorf experts, on playing 2 d6 here. That's what Dominguez does. I think that's what Maxime does, and so on and so forth. When obviously knight f3, knight f6, d4 takes a6, you're back in business, or knight f3, a6. And the one move order thing you have to deal with is here knight e2, knight f6, once again d4, of course you transpose, g3. Now I don't think a6 is ideal, but you do want to play g6 here, which is not really a Najdorf. It's not really a big deal either, because this is a good type of dragon, but I would not. Yeah, you have to know a little something about this line. I don't, but I think black's fine. Rook b8, preparing b5, and I think it's considered to be perfectly fine for black. Of course, it's true that f4 is somewhat more dangerous here than after knight c6, but I think the days where white players went here regularly are over, and I have to admit, I don't know very much about stuff like this, but it does look to me like black is fine. So I will play 2 d6 if I were a Najdorf player. As mentioned, I believe the other option is a6. Once again, try to transpose back if they go knight f3 or knight e2, d6. And after f4, now you can play b5, which maybe adds a little different flavor. I would guess the a6, g3 lines objectively are less pleasant than the knight c3, d6, f4 lines, which is why most people go d6, not a6. But I would choose between those two. Like, yeah, to go for this territory just because they move ordered you with 2 knight c3 seems like unnecessary. It's much easier to look at that one g3 dragon line they can move over you into than having to deal with this whole mess. in my opinion. So, best of luck combating the two knight c3 tricksters, JohannWilhelmMoebius. What else do we have? Norn saying, "Hi Jan, I sometimes struggle against the Triangle Slav setup." Wow, a lot of triangle questions today. d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, c6. And all the possible transpositions looming over the following moves. Usually I would like to play 4 knight f3, even if this means that you cannot enter the exchange Qxd1 with later knight g2 anymore. Yeah. But in this exact position, that allows black to play the tricky notable variation, which scores much better for black in the main lines. Is that true? It seems there aren't too many good sidelines against it one can deploy. If I play the 4 e3, the opponent has the option to go into a favorable stonewall formation, maybe after some waiting moves like bishop e7, knight f3, f5, with the knights already committed to c3 and f3 and e3 already played. Or do I just have to accept the fact that I need to learn some theory of the gambit line with 4 e4 to challenge black's setup in the most energetic way? At least this gambit scores quite well for white in the databases. Oh, sorry, I didn't have it all on screen. I'm reading here from my big screen. I should have scrolled a bit. Sorry, here we go. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Norn, for the question. Yeah, I think you more or less listed the options. And with white, I usually don't like to give black and white, no pun intended, none taken, I guess, recommendations. But just, you know, give speeches about blah, blah, blah. Speeches about blah, blah, blah. What's happening here? Sorry, my little board disappeared. I will hopefully find it again. Here it is. Apologies. Kieran is half asleep. So d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, c6. Let's go through the options you mentioned. Knight f3, yeah, that normally would be the go-to move if you were sure they would play knight f6, I guess, if you don't mind dealing with the semi-Slav. But you do mind the notable, which I understand. It's one of those that you get so rarely that it's always slightly annoying. Ugh, I haven't looked at this forever. When it happens over the board, I'm a bit surprised by your claim that black scores highly. I haven't looked it up, but I always thought that in the main lines here, there was black fighting for equality / survival. This is how it goes. No, this knight d2. It's of course a little scary with these pawns so far advanced. But we also have the 2 bishops and control over the center. And I spent quite some time checking this at some point. I didn't think it was that simple for white. So it's, I think, a bit of a bluff, the notable. Maybe not, don't write me angry letters. I don't think it's a bad opening. But it's mainly has this annoying effect that very often black players will be better prepared and they will enjoy checking these positions and they will know their tricks, while white rarely faces this. So I also kind of have this instinct to avoid it, even though I think that if you study this stuff in detail, it gives you as good a chance for an advantage as, let's say, this Marshall Gambit that you also mentioned. Then you mentioned another thing. After e3, you don't like them transposing into sort of stone walls, which once again, I understand it's unpleasant because it feels like we're being move ordered, but I don't think it's that scary. I think objectively black should still consider just going knight f6 and transposing back to the semi-Slav here. In the stonewall things, even if you just do the counter stonewall, I kind of like white's position. Just do this. Go bishop d3, short castles. I don't know how does the theory go? I guess something like this. Knight e4, you go bishop d2. You put this bishop on e1. You're just slightly better, I would say. So, and black doesn't get to have all this fun with this devastating kingside attack. It's just one line, but I don't think things are particularly scary there. You said that they could start with some waiting move. Bishop e7, I've never seen bishop e7. Or haven't seen it much. But even here, I guess your counter stone wall doesn't run away if you want it. Or just play bishop d3 and ask. Then for a move, I thought bishop d6 was more common. But once again, we can do this and this if we want to, which I always thought was a simple way to at least not let black have too much fun. And then last not least, I think we have a more in-detail question about this, probably in the next episode, so I'll leave it for that. Your question, if you should just learn some theory and go for e4. That's very possible, of course. And as I said, I think is as good a try for an advantage as objectively as, let's say, the notable lines after knight f3, dc4. I don't think after e4 white is necessarily winning. But it's also true that many black players use this triangle, sort of hoping you don't call them out, and play e4, because who has time to study these things? So studying those from the white perspective could very well yield benefits. Does that cover everything? I think so, yeah. So the answer is, I don't have an answer. All three moves you mentioned are perfectly fine. They depend on how much time you want to spend on, your general appetite for positions with a pawn down, sacrifices, or sharp positions. The easy way out is e3, especially if your repertoire against the semi-Slav is e3 based if you like playing whatever lines like this with knight f3, queen c2. I do not think you have to be too scared of bishop d6, f5 plans. They're playable, of course, but it's just another position. So that's the easy one. And then, I think both studying the notable and studying the Marshall Gambit give white chances for an advantage. It's the question. If you have time and patience to look at these, admittedly, pretty specific and irregular positions. I hope that helped. And this notable stuff, how does it go? e5, they usually lose after bishop c2, no, at least in correspondence, but queen c7, they had, well, first of all, they have this trick a4, rook a4, queen c6 threatening, so you go bishop c2, and they had been trying to survive these things, no? I'm not sure if black equalizes or not, because, I also haven't done my notable study last couple of years. But those are the two spots together with 4e4, which we'll cover more in the next episode that I would advise looking into if you have the time. Thanks for your question, Mr. Who was it? I'm messing all my little screens up here. Mr. Norn. All right. Let's do one more, then wrap up this little program. Passedpawnpusher. He's saying, hi Jan, how should black go about remaneuvering the c6 knight in the 5d3 rulopith? For example, e4, a5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, d3, d6, c3, g6, castles, bishop g7, rook e1, castles, knight b2, b5, bishop c2. Knight b8 is a popular move here, but white can get a nice position with a4 or d4. Usually I play the open, so 5d3 can be annoying even though I enjoy the positions. Thanks. Yeah. I hear you. Let me get a board. A6, bishop a4, knight f6, 5d3. I've never been a big d6, g6 guy, which is not really an evaluation of its objective merits. I never liked it because it leads to slower play and more maneuvering positions where one needs patience, which I never consider my key skills. So I've always played either the direct bishop c5 or b5 followed by bishop c5, which I think I find and I've covered in more detail than these d6 things. So I'm not that big of an expert here. So d6, what was your line? c3, g6. Should be noted, this is another question that always puzzles me a bit, that Magnus recently played bishop e7 and won a very nice game against Ali Reza with castles rook e8, bishop f8. It always feels strange to put the bishop on e7 and then spend some time to sometimes later relocate it to f8 and g6, g7. But at least it gives you something to do. So I'm not sure. This bishop e7 certainly is a move as well. g6 castles, bishop g7, rook e1, short castles, knight bd2. That was the line you gave. b5. Do you have to go b5 already? Always seemed to me like rook e8 is useful in all the lines here, because these knight h5, f5 plans don't really work. So you could start with rook e8 and still wait with b5 for a move. But no particular need. b5 is fine, bishop c2. And your question is how to reroute this c6 knight here. The answer is it's not so easy. Like with g6, bishop g7, we no longer have this knight e7, knight g6. Knight a5 makes no sense after b4. And I agree with you that knight b8 I do not like here, especially in combination. Or not in combination with, but combined with the fact that white has not played knight f1 yet, because often you get these, I don't know, a4, I'm not sure what the move is, but bishop b7, b4, knight b7. You get these things, and all of a sudden, this knight is doing a lot of annoying stuff on the queen side, because we went knight b8. So I'm not a fan of knight b8, and I would guess the answer is don't regroup that knight anytime soon. Leave it there and worry about the other stuff. The other stuff being that we need to kind of prepare for a4, and we need to have a plan against this knight f1, knight g3 typical maneuver. I do think that rook e8 fits the bill the best even here. And one thing, I recently saw Paco do this, not exactly in this position, Paco Vallejo, against Luis Engel in Bundesliga, and I thought this was a smart plan. Black should consider a5 quite strongly in all of these positions, in my opinion. Also after h3, let's say. First of all, it stops this white plan we talked about earlier with b4, knight b3, knight a5 in the distant future. And after a4, b4, of course, we leave some weaknesses, but we also claim quite some space on the queen side. And I believe it is a very sensible idea in all these positions, which is a recent, well, realization is strong. I'm not sure if I'm right, but I recently only started thinking about these a5 moves because they never really were on my radar. If white goes a4 here, you go b4. They go b4 before we moved our knight, then we're in time with a5 to break up this thing. So I would go for this rook e8, keep options open. Maybe we want to play d5, maybe we want to go a5, and then if after a5 they don't react, let's say they go for something like this, you can even grab more space with a4 here before we consider reacting in the center. So I'm not saying this is the answer to all the questions, but there is no particularly good way, I agree with that, to regroup this knight. I don't like these knight b8, knight b7 plans, particularly before white is committed to knight f1. So I will play rook e8, possibly even b4, b5, and then think about these a5, a4 plans. Leave the knight on c6 for now. Hope that helped a little bit. Thanks, guys, for watching this episode. there is my Yanistan voucher. But if you're watching this before the candidates start, I'm recording this on 15th of March. The candidates start on the 17th. There are some bigger promotions that I should tell you about. So you can save more than the 50% on my voucher if I have them somewhere. There is the Candidates 2020 code. This is for Chess24 premium memberships. So if you want to ask a question in the next opening clinic, if you want to challenge world champion Magnus Carlsen in his next Banter Blitz, he just did one, or me, or all the other people doing those, and get access to all the video series on chess24.com. You can now save 40% with the code Candidates 2020. There is my Chessable series that I talked about earlier, complete repertoire against E4, E5, that I worked a lot on. You can check that out at our friends at chessable.com/Jan. All right, enough plugging. I hope I will see all of you during the Candidates live commentary. Those shows will be free to watch for everyone, even though, of course, we appreciate the Chess24 premium members and we'll give them somewhat preferential treatment when it comes to asking questions to Vladimir Kramnik, who will join us every day for the first 8 rounds. And hopefully Mr. Magnus shows face once in a while as well. All right, plug over. I hope I'll see you at the candidates. I believe I will do one more of these opening clinics to answer all the questions, and then we'll do a new season probably when the candidates are over. Thanks for watching. See you next time.